Here we go. God, I haven't been on the mic in a minute. I haven't been on it in a minute. I'm not going to talk like this the whole time, I promise. I like to talk like this sometimes. You know what I mean? Just to like, whatever. Anyway, here we are. So, here's the thing. Everyone always talks about their first heartbreak as if we've lived through like an 80s romantic comedy movie that just didn't work out. But nobody ever talks about that first real heartbreak. And I'm sure you're probably like, Lana, what the fuck are you even talking about? Let me tell you something. No one talks about the first friendship that breaks your heart. Okay? And I genuinely feel like this is the first real heartbreak. A man, you may take a few months away from me, but I'll bounce back and be fine. But a friend, baby, you might take years from me, you know? Especially if it's that first friend heartbreak, you know? Like, that one just sucks. It's terrible. So, I really want to explore this today because I've lived through this and I'm honestly still learning how to heal from it. Because sometimes I feel like a friendship can almost feel deeper emotionally than a romantic one. I don't know if that makes sense, but I confide in my girlfriends about so much, you know, like they're my support system, they're my safe space, my chance to just be me with no filter, no judgment. And so when you lose somebody like that, to me, that's a heartbreak. So I really want this episode to be a place where we can hold space about a topic that not a lot of people are talking about, a space to validate some of those feelings, but also how to kind of release those feelings of heartbreak. And so again, I just want to say I'm still learning, but I'm hoping that you guys are kind of willing to come on this journey with me. I mean, if you haven't been following me already, that's kind of what we're doing here. So, I sound like fucking Dora, I just realized. Come on, everybody, let's go. Shit. You know, the worst part is that I actually like grew up looking like her too, and I got bullied for it badly, but here we are. Not ashamed, honestly. Dora is a badass, and now I'm getting off topic. So, shall we dive into this? Let's go. Also, before I get too far into this, I want to address that, yes, I'm going to be talking about and referencing a deeply personal experience of mine that does involve another person. And it's really important to me that I remain respectful and intentional when speaking about something as sensitive as this, because there are always two sides to every story. This is my truth, but it may not be their truth. So, for obvious reasons, I'm going to be keeping some things confidential. The other thing that I think is really important for me to know is that this story could be very triggering for some. It's going to be heavy, okay? I will be referencing thoughts of suicide and self-harm. And if you're not in a space to hear that, I would highly advise you to skip this episode because it is a deep one. Okay, now that we've gotten all of the precursors out of the way, let's just jump in. So it's been years since me and this other person have fallen off. And I really don't want to focus too much on the ending because it wasn't pretty. There was a lot that was said, but looking back, we were both so young, and I think that there is still a lot that has been left unsaid. So, for the sake of the story, I'm going to give this person a filler name. Okay, let's call them Mary. Okay, not loving Mary. Let's see. Let's go with Brenda. I don't really like that one either. Fuck it, we'll keep Brenda. We're just gonna keep Brenda. Okay. So Brenda and I roughly became friends in about the 5th grade. And I was really just drawn to them because it seemed like everyone really liked them. And all the boys like had a crush on them, and all the girls wanted to be friends with Brenda, and I was like, well, damn, I kind of want to be friends with Brenda, Anyways, the choice name is wild, but we're just gonna stick with it. We eventually became friends, and Brenda was what I would call part of the popular group. Yes, I'm using air quotes. I hate that shit, but that's what it is, right? And me, being the prepubescent teenager that I was like, oh, well, she's my in, you know what I mean? Which, looking back, that sounds terrible, but anyways, eventually Brenda and I developed a solid friendship, right? Like, we would confide in each other. We would do stupid, typical teenager shit, like, ding-dong ditching, sneaking out, you know what I'm saying? All that reckless shit. We'd have sleepovers, like, every weekend. We went on vacations with our families together, like, talking about besties, right? And you have to remember, at this time, I was deep into my let me hide behind this mask phase. So the friendships that I was surrounding myself with, they were all I knew. I didn't have the capacity to realize that some of those friendships were, to some extent, toxic or just not good for me because, again, this is all I've known up until this point. So once we got to high school, I started to slowly recognize that Brenda's friendship was conditional. There were certain situations that happened that I felt extremely hurt by. And when I expressed those feelings, they weren't necessarily met with understanding or kindness. I felt like there was a lack of accountability, and she couldn't seem to understand why her actions made me feel the way that they did, right? And so I felt neglected as a friend. I felt like they cared more about image and, their perception of how they looked than what we had as a solid friendship. And this is where it gets a little hard for me to talk about because high school for me was not fucking easy, bro. And I'm not about to make this a pity party because that's not what this is, but it's a part of my story, and this is my podcast, so fuck it, I'm gonna say whatever I want. So trigger warning. My senior year, I was extremely suicidal, and it took me a lot of years to realize that those were the thoughts and feelings that I was having at the time. Because on paper, I had it all, I had everything. I had the support system from my mom and my dad, and I was part of the popular friend group. I had good grades and I was well liked by all my teachers, and I had the acknowledgments of an athlete, but internally I was struggling so bad, and I felt guilty for having these feelings, and I felt selfish for having thoughts of harming myself, because why should I? I have it all, right? I shouldn't feel depressed or sad. There are people who have it way worse than I do. And if I'm being honest, a lot of the girls in my grade were fucking ruthless, bro. Like, I remember somebody sent me a screenshot of my name being thrown around in a group chat, just calling me awful shit, bro. Like, talking about, don't pay attention to that pussy-looking bitch, and she's so fucking ugly, nobody even likes her. Just, like, terrible shit, bro. And as a teenager, seeing that shit and knowing that people think those terrible things about you, you actually start to internalize that so deeply and start believing that those things are true. There was a moment on my senior spring break where I had ended up alone on a cruise ship. I didn't know where my friends had gone, my so-called friends. And I just kind of started internalizing everything that had happened up until that point. I was spiraling mentally because I didn't feel like I had people around me, at least in my peer circle, who really cared about me and who wanted to show up and be there for me in the ways that I felt like I was showing up and being there for people. And in high school, there's this weird hierarchy of fucking coolness or something. I don't know. It's stupid as fuck, like, looking back. I struggled showing up and being myself because I just wanted to be liked. I just wanted people to like me. And through my senior year, it was bad. And I didn't really talk to anybody about it because I felt ashamed and I felt embarrassed, and I am going on a tangent. Anyways, so I'm on this cruise ship and I'm just thinking about all these things that have led up to this point where I am now alone and my friends aren't around. And I felt like nobody cared. I felt like nobody understood what I was going through. And it was a terrifying thought because I was looking over the balcony and I thought, what if I jumped? You know? Would anybody care? Would the pain finally go away? It took me a long time to look back on those feelings and to sit with them and validate them. Obviously, I didn't act on those feelings, thankfully. But to this day, I still don't know how I navigated all that shit, because the reality is that I felt alone. And the only thing that got me through that moment was knowing that I had committed to a school to play volleyball. And that was the only thing. I say all this to say that my experience in high school led me to hold a lot of resentment towards my friends and towards Brenda, okay? And naturally, after I graduated, I just didn't hold the same respect for her or for them. We grew apart, and I would see her sometimes in the summer, but to me, it never was the same. And then I did something I'm not necessarily proud of, and I'll be transparent to an extent, but let's just say I did and said some things that I shouldn't have, and I think part of me did those things because I held so much resentment towards her already that I didn't really care if I hurt her. I almost wanted her to feel the pain the way I did from her. And I guess I just didn't really care whether the friendship was going to last or not. And that sounds terrible, but, I was exposed to other friendships that made me understand what a true friendship was. And I just felt like I never had that with her. And so I'm not saying that what I did was right. I just think I acted out of anger because of all the things that had happened in the past between us. And after everything was said and done, we had a terrible fight. I said what I needed to say. She said what she needed to say, and we hung it up after that, and just decided to go our separate ways. But I tell you my story to say that even now, years later, I'm still trying to heal from this friendship that we had. It wasn't always pretty, but she knew me at one of my most vulnerable times. We grew up together. We did everything together, from sports and school to crying over boys and vacations to the cottage. She broke my heart, and I honestly probably broke hers. I think it takes time to grieve somebody who is still around, even when they hurt you, right? And it's a different kind of grief. And not to mention, for me, we both live back in our hometowns. So, we see each other frequently, and it never gets easier. To have had a friendship with somebody that you have so much history with, who you knew so deeply that you share all these memories with, and then to now be in the same space again and act as if you've never met one another is a pain that I can't even describe. And I know that a part of me is still mad at her, but a part of me misses the friendship that we had and wonders what that friendship would be like if we were still friends today. So I think even though I have worked through some of these feelings, I still just don't know if I've had an accurate enough time to grieve, because every time I see her, it brings up old wounds. And there are things I wish I could say to her even now. I want to be able to stand up for myself in the way my younger self never could. But then I'm like, I don't want to be mad at her and cause a scene, because I don't want to have these feelings of rage. There's no reason for me to just fucking blow up and talk crazy. I'd just be reacting from the pain that I still feel, right? And so the past few weeks, I've really been trying to forgive her and I'd like to share my progress with you all, okay? I mentioned in a previous episode that I'd be taking some time to get to know my inner teenager. Well, here's some results of that, right? But in talking with her, I realized that I never got the apology that I felt like I deserved. And I've been carrying this rooted anger with me for so long that it has now been showing up for me presently and affecting my peace. That's the reason why I still get anxious when I see her, but I'm learning how to not be mad anymore. I'm learning how to be okay with knowing that I will probably never get that apology and that she probably never will respect me again because of the thoughts and feelings she has towards what I did to her, but I don't want this heartbreak to have a hold on me anymore. I need to learn how to forgive her for all the things she did to me, but to also be grateful for the memories we've shared together and just let her go, And every time I feel like I'm close, she pops up back in my life again, like a fucking mole from Whack-A-Mole. Like, didn't I just hammer your ass down? Like, goddamn. I say all this to say that healing from a heartbreak takes work, okay? You really have to learn how to be self-reflective and ask yourself the right questions in order to find the answers that you're seeking. Let me just say, I think this is a lot easier when you have a therapist to help talk you through some of these things, especially to start this process, okay? Because you have to engage in those parts of your brain and activate them because they just haven't been used in a while. And that's, at first what I did. But now I've found that learning how to be there for yourself is the best kind of therapy. All you have is you. And I don't know if this is a good motto to live by, but it's gotten me through some of my darkest times. That even when you feel like no one is there for you, you can be there. You can be there for yourself. And somehow that always made me feel less alone. I don't know why, but it was like, hey, all you have is you, Something I've also found after doing a lot of self-reflecting work is that I have a better understanding of who I am because I've allowed myself to look at the parts of myself that I don't like or that are painful. And I have a lot more respect for myself now than I feel like I ever have because I've learned how to not feel guilty about having those uncomfortable feelings, and I've learned how to validate them on my own. Here's the thing. Just because there may be someone else out there in the world who you feel like is going through something that's quote unquote worse or deeper than what you're going through, doesn't mean that your feelings are any less valid. It's just a different experience. That's their journey, and I just feel like there's no severity to this shit. You're allowed to feel, dude. You're allowed to emote. That's part of being human. And if we don't allow those feelings to surface, if we don't let them be present, we're only going to harbor those feelings until they bubble up. And now you're wondering why for charging an extra 50 cents for barbecue. Shout out Chance the Rapper, because I cannot claim that. Cannot claim that bar, okay? But seriously, when you hold on to these feelings like rage, like anger, like sadness, you'll start to eventually feel the effects of holding all those feelings in. And it's so much harder to find the root of those feelings once you get older because you've let them sit for so long. It's like that bag of Cheetos you forgot about in the back of your pantry, you know? It's been hiding out there for years, stale as shit. Probably somehow still edible because it's processed as fuck. The point I'm trying to make is don't wait till you can't find your bag of Cheetos. You know? Don't wait until you can't find your emotions to deal with them. Confront them now. Otherwise, you'll spend years trying to unpack why you felt the way that you did. Obviously, and I say this a lot, I probably say this in every fucking episode. Obviously, it's easier said than done. You know, I'm not saying that dealing with the bullshit that life brings is easy, because when I was going through all this shit, I didn't even know what the fuck I was thinking about. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know what the fuck I was feeling. I didn't know how to deal with the shit that I was feeling. And I didn't even know how or why I was having those feelings until I really just sat with them and I felt them and I cried and I got angry and, you know. And I guess like now that I'm thinking about it, it might be hard to deal with those feelings in the moment because you don't understand them, right? But don't let them sit in the back of the pantry forever, bro, you know? Anyways, everything takes time and it can be frustrating as fuck. Just make sure your Cheetos don't get mold on them, okay? I don't know. I'm done with the Cheetos. I don't know why the fuck I keep talking about Cheetos. Anyway, I think I'm reaching the end of my rope, and this episode may have gone all over the place. You know, I touched on things like grief, grieving a person who's still living. I touched on deep, hard, emotional feelings that we don't always understand or recognize when they come about, and it's tough. It's a tough topic. But at the end of the day, learning how to sit with our emotions and process them and be there for ourselves is the best kind of healing. And we need to be talking about this topic more. I know society doesn't like talking about the hard things. At this rate, we probably won't be able to say shit about fuck because everything's being censored on some really weird ass shit. But let me not go there in this episode, okay? I want to leave you all with this. Give yourself permission to feel. That's it. Once you do that, you'll learn how to validate your own feelings. You'll be able to see yourself better because of it. And honestly, you'll have more respect for yourself and love for yourself because you took the time to get to know those really heavy feelings. Okay? And I just want to say thank you guys for listening to my story. I know this was pretty deep, but I hope that some of it, maybe a little bit of it, maybe all of it, resonated with you. And even if I just reach one of you, just know I see you and you're not alone. You're resilient and you should be proud of how far you've come. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate y'all, whoever y'all may be. And I'll see you next week.